students, and welcome to an introduction to academic writing. Please be sure to adjust the volume on your device so that you can hear my voice as you view the PowerPoint slides. Let's go over the objectives for this lesson and then get started. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to understand the expectations of academic writing, identify the components of a rhetorical situation, understand the relationship between a research question and thesis statement, and consider different organizational structures and outlines. Let's get started. How do you typically think about writing? Do you ever think about it at all? Is it something you like to do privately, like keeping a journal or writing short stories just for your eyes? Or is it something you consider to be a special skill that's just for smart people like professionals, authors, and academics? How do you usually think about academic writing? I think most of us tend to consider academic writing to be full of jargon, that it's dense and theoretical, and let's be honest, that it's probably boring. And for some researchers, that's probably true. But I encourage you to consider this view of writing from Neil Postman, a famous cultural and media critic from the 70s and 80s. He describes academic writing this way, and I quote, "Research is weaving narratives about human behavior, a form of storytelling not unlike conventional imaginative literature. I call this work storytelling because this suggests that an author has given a unique interpretation to a set of human events, that she has supported her interpretation with examples in various forms, and that her interpretation cannot be proved or disproved but draws its appeal from the power of language, the depth of explanations, the relevance of examples, and the credibility of its theme. They are bound by time, by situation, and above all, the cultural prejudices of the researcher, quite like a piece of fiction." Consider Neil Postman's description of writing for a moment. I agree with Neil Postman that we can think of academic writing like storytelling, that it is indeed a creative endeavor. But it's still true that this kind of writing occurs within a different context than fiction. Despite disciplinary boundaries, and even despite different types of academic writing, think, for example, of the difference between a published research paper and a set of observational notes, there are general conventions that distinguish the way academic stories are composed. First, academic writing demonstrates critical thinking and analysis skills. It takes skills like self-awareness, honesty, open-mindedness, discipline, and judgment to create the kinds of grounded interpretations we make for an academic paper. Academic authors use these skills when we read through and select our source material, collect and analyze our data, and organize and write up our papers. Next, academic writing says as much about the author as it does the subject being written about. It's our chance to establish and demonstrate our credibility and authority. That means we have to have a certain confidence that our claims or interpretations count, that they matter, because we did the research, we know what we're talking about. That also means we have to make sure to use clear and direct language, making sure we consider our audience when we use specialized vocabulary, and making clear transitions between points. Thus, we demonstrate our credibility and authority to our audience by using strong and explicit evidence, omitting qualifying language, and integrating source material and citing it appropriately. Finally, academic writing, like other forms of storytelling, means that we create a connection with our audience, and we have an interest in their ability to understand what we're saying. Within the academic writing context I just described, there are specific expectations for doing academic writing. We must organize our piece around a central claim. We call this a thesis statement. This grounds the rest of the paper and signals to both the author and the reader what the paper is about and what to expect in later sections. We must cite all of our source material, and we must do this consistently by using a single citation style. Doing this allows us to demonstrate our knowledge on the topic, substantiate our claims, and of course give credit to the sources of our expertise. In our course, you will learn the basic rules for using APA style. As academic writers, we must learn to create explicit links between our data or evidence and our claims. This requires us to show our reader, rather than tell, what's happening with regard to the topic, and this can take a lot of practice. Finally, we must use appropriate grammar and mechanics to ensure that our writing conforms to appropriate standards and conventions of the English language. I mentioned before that a significant element of the writing context is connecting to our audience. Understanding that means that as writers, we take an active role in creating a product that is meaningful and that matters in the world. Neil Postman calls this writing with a purpose. We can use the concept of the rhetorical situation to think about our responsibility as writers. The rhetorical situation refers to the full set of circumstances surrounding any communication. When we write, we are both answering an academic question, we call this a research question, and I will discuss that in the next slide, and we provide meaningful and useful information to our reader to guide future action or understanding in some way. We must negotiate the interplay between four factors: the communicator, us, our text, both what we're writing about and how it gets written up, our audience, who reads our writing product, and the context. As I mentioned on a previous slide, a core expectation of academic writing is that it is grounded by a central claim, or an organizing argument, that guides the structure of the rest of the product. We call this claim a thesis statement. Yet I also mentioned that academic writers must answer a question in their writing. We call that a research question. As you can see on this slide, I have defined both research question and thesis statement for you. Research question refers to the central question that guides what your writing will show. For example, a research paper may ask the following research question: how does the Office of Sustainability communicate its mission? The thesis statement is the answer to that research question, and it explicates the central claim of the paper. So a corresponding example of a thesis statement would be: the Office of Sustainability implements specific actions toward creating a sustainable community. That thesis statement explicitly answers the research question posed above. Specifically, your thesis statement is comprised of two parts: the topic or subject matter, and the comment, the argument that you're making about the subject matter. Consider this example. In the previous slide, I mentioned the Office of Sustainability. A sample thesis statement may read: the Office of Sustainability implements specific actions toward creating a sustainable community. Well, the topic here is the Office of Sustainability and the communication of its mission. And the comment, which is indicated for you on this slide by the ellipses because I have not filled it in yet, would be the specific things that the writer argues that the Office of Sustainability implements. When we write thesis statements, there are two primary options. I call them the umbrella and the list method. The umbrella method is a thesis statement that is written to be specific enough to answer the research question, and yet it's also broad enough to allow the specific claims in the paper to explicate particular aspects of that broad topic. For example, again using the same example with the Office of Sustainability from the previous slides. Using the umbrella claim method, a thesis statement might look like this: the Office of Sustainability implements specific actions toward creating a sustainable campus community. Notice how that claim is relatively broad. I'm not naming the specific actions that the office takes. I will name those in my claims, but the thesis statement itself is an umbrella that encapsulates those claims that will be presented later in the paper. By contrast, the list method of thesis statement actually includes those specific aspects of the topic that will be discussed in the claims of the paper. Again, consider the example. The Office of Sustainability implements specific actions toward creating a sustainable campus by supporting local food initiatives, endorsing energy conservation, and influencing campus policy. Notice how this second thesis statement specifically names the topics that will be the topic for the specific claims presented later in the paper. Either writing method works, but you should consider your writing skills in choosing which is best for you. Either way, the thesis statement operates as a roadmap that guides the reader through the rest of the paper. As such, it's also a handy checklist for you, the writer, to be sure claims align with the central argument. What you see here is the basic organizational structure for an academic writing product. Generally, the piece begins with an introduction that orients the reader to what is being discussed in the paper, provides a rationale for the topic chosen, and presents the research question and thesis statement. The body of the paper is organized around 3 claims, or sometimes more, depending on the size and scope of the piece or your writing assignment. Each claim is substantiated with specific evidence, including cited sources. Together, the claims that make up the body of the paper converge to demonstrate the central argument of the thesis statement. If you think back to the 2 types of thesis statements discussed on the previous slide, those 3 claims that you see here in this diagram should align to the 3 items in the list should you choose the list method of thesis statement writing. Your writing product ends with a conclusion that provides a quick review of the claims presented and also presents a final rationale for the reader. Writing is an experiment, and it's often a messy process. But it's a terrific journey into your mind and even into your soul. I encourage you to be open-minded in your writing and stay open to learning new skills to enhance the writing products you create. Thank you.